There you go.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So I am going to introduce Dr. Pearson here really quickly. She serves as president and CEO of OD Synergistics Consulting, LLC, which was founded in 2019. She is a trusted advisor to business leaders and successful companies in the U.S., working with them to assess organizational issues, reshape structures and processes, and build depth of management capability. She is a skilled diagnostician who helps her clients to understand organizational strategies and systems to make comprehensive decisions. In addition to her consulting work, Angela is a Navy and Army veteran and a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt coach. In her career, she has over 20 years of experience working with many well-known companies in roles such as operations leader, HR generalist, training manager, and environmental health and safety manager. She is currently the president of the board of directors for the Food Pantries for the Capital District, serves as member of Equinox Inc.'s Development and Domestic Violence Committees in Albany, New York, and VP of Programming for SEVA ATD Chapter, and a dedicated SHRM USAA Veteran Ambassador. Dr. Angela Pearson, thank you for being on the Rutledge Perspective.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm so glad to have you here. I cannot wait to have this conversation. And y'all, look, the spirit moves in interesting ways. So on the show a couple weeks ago, probably just a week ago, on the show, Dr. Pearson tuned in. And so at the end, Jerry was saying, here's all the people who are here. And I'm like, hey, that's great. Then I was on a panel last week that was talking about data and HR. And Dr. Pearson was on that in the chat. And so I said, you know what? I need to talk to you. Let's just get online. Got on a Zoom call. And I think we talked for about an hour. I was like, okay, I need you on the show. Can you be on the 19th? does that work on your calendar? And turns out she knows Dr. Cynthia J. Hickman, that all of you guys know, who is a caregiver extraordinaire. I mean, it's just, the world is small. And so when you hear this woman's story, you're going to know why we wanted to connect. And so, Dr. Pearson, where I want to start is tell us a little bit quickly about, your current company, OD Synergistics, but also kind of this journey from military and PhD and then doing your own business and actually looking at going back into corporate and having done both of those things and flipping back and forth, that adaptability and flexibility. Maybe give us a quick overview and then we're going to dive in.
Okay, so OD Synergistics is a management consulting firm, and I started that probably about 2 years ago, based off of the premise of being in corporate America and senior leadership, kind of being a little disruptive.
Yeah.
But to backtrack, before I get too deep into OD Synergistics, all right, mother at 17 years old, okay, decided to join the Navy after having my second child. And actually, I spent 3 years active duty in the Navy.
Okay.
Got out of the Navy, had gotten married, divorced all in that 3 years, had a third child. And then I took 8 years just for me to go to school. Because I felt like learning kind of kept me moving and kept me going. So after starting my first college degree in community college, you know what? I'm actually getting some background.
Are you getting some feedback? Jerry, maybe can we turn it down a little bit? Nope, it's still. Yeah, I may have to keep going and just kind of turn the one down on your other device.
Okay.
Okay.
So actually, I ended up being in a domestic violence situation while I was working on my bachelor's. Mm-hmm. 4 kids by this time, okay? Yeah. And so I went through going to a shelter. By the grace of God, I finished my degree, got into the workforce, and basically fast track. I was missing something. So I said, look, I think I'm going to go back into the military. I was missing the discipline. Mm-hmm. So 32 years old, 4 kids later, I went back into the military, single parent.
Wow.
Sometimes I'm like, well, why did I do that? But I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
So I went into the Army at that time and continued to do schools. It was something about going to college that kept my mind just at ease and, Mm-hmm. And after working for so many well-known companies and so many different types of positions, I said, I need to work for myself. And I need to help organizations and individuals learn how to be better with engaging with their employees so they can retain them.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people that are listening have been at a point in their life in a job where they say, this is not for me. I think we're going to move on. Maybe because of toxic leadership or just toxic culture.
Yes.
But I felt like it was my duty to get into these organizations and touch these individuals and help them learn how to be better at what they do so they could be better for themselves, their employees, and for the organization as a whole. And so that's how OD Synergistics came to be. Another little nugget to this is back in July of this year, I actually decided to take my business from part-time to full-time.
Yes.
And it's been an interesting process.
Yes.
However, I've now decided to go back to part-time with my business, right?
Yes.
Because we pivot, we make these changes as needed, right?
Yes.
And I just, this is going to be like a little surprise to people that know me that are watching.
Yeah.
I actually got my dream job. And I start in less than a week and a half.
Awesome.
Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which really is a big passion for me. I've been working on that in my business the last 2 years, helping companies start their journey and move their journey forward. So,
yay! You heard it here first on the Rutledge Perspective Radio Show Live.
And something like that.
I love it. And and this is why you guys hear this story. And I knew this was going to happen because I'm like, I don't know where we're going to start. So Dr. Pearson, we're going to go where the Spirit leads us. That's what I told her, right? There's a few things that you said in that, right? In that little short introduction. And one of those that I think I really want people to tap into is the fact that you knew yourself well enough to know to say, you know what? There's something missing here, and that's discipline. And so what can I do to build that discipline? And for you, that was, you know what, let me go do this military thing. I know I've got 4 kids. I know but that discipline piece works for me. Maybe tell a little bit more about what was it for you that made you say, you know what, this is what's missing. How did you identify what was missing?
Well, probably being in the civilian sector and seeing the lack of discipline from a lot of the organizations that I was dealing with. But, the military provides structure.
Right.
And it's one of those things where, for me, I like structure.
Yes.
I can be in an unstructured environment and survive. But for me, having 4 kids and having been a single parent, we had structure. So I was missing that structure within myself, in the workforce. So I felt it was really important to go to that entity that would give me what I needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I think we don't often give ourselves the opportunity to really do that self-evaluation. We were talking about that on Tuesday, right? That really your own expectations and knowing you got to know you better than anybody knows you. And yet that work is hard to not only to know you, but then to say, I should probably work on that. Right. And then also, I think people don't realize that you can move between like the military services. So you started out in Navy, but then you ended up being in the Army. So maybe tell people about how that works and why one would make the decision, potentially, make the decision to do a different, arm of the services.
So I'll tell you quickly why I did it, and then I'll address, what others can do in order to make that decision. Yeah. And the reason that I did it was because in the Navy, I was stationed at what they call an air station. So I was stationed on land and then did periodic deployments to sea and stuff like that. So for me, I would have to go back to sea duty. And then in the Navy, I actually had to give legal guardianship of my children to someone. And I had done that once and didn't want to do it again.
Yeah.
And then that's why I decided to go into the Army. I've had a lot of family members in between both of the services. So I said, well, let me try this one. And for anyone that wants to make that transition between services, I would definitely recommend them doing the research, understanding what benefits they will gain from being in that particular service, and then make the best decision based off of that information.
That's fantastic, because I think we sometimes forget that we actually have options. One of the first lines on my website is, you always have a choice. You always have a choice. You're not free from the consequences of the choices you make, but you always have a choice. And so Don't let somebody tell you you can't just because they haven't or they can't see the way to do it. We have a comment here that says, based on what you were talking about around discipline, are there any book recommendations you have around becoming a more disciplined individual?
I have specific that I would love to do a little research and maybe share with anyone.
Uh-oh, we're having you go in and out a little bit.
Yeah, actually, that off, but I'm at.
Okay. Yeah,
that is what.
Yeah, we're getting a little feedback. So what she was saying was, she does have some, but she's gonna do a little bit more research, and so she'll give that back to us. Yeah, we can hear you. She'll give that back to us after she does a little bit more, and we'll get that posted for all of you guys, both on her site. So be sure you're following her, OD Synergistics, as well as Dr. Angela Pearson. She is on LinkedIn and she's on Instagram. So be sure you're following her. And I'll make sure when we post the video of this that we post her links as well, so you can get to her both ways. So you're welcome. So, you know, that other piece that you mentioned when you were doing your introduction was, you know, in that 8 years, I did 8 years for me. I wanted to continue to learn. I did 8 years for me. Did y'all hear that? I did 8 years for me. And you're talking about someone who is a single parent, who has a bunch of stuff going on, and who made the decision to do 8 years for her. Say a little bit more for people about that, because I think especially people who are single parents, or people who, even if you're not a single parent, if you've got kids at home, you got stuff. That idea of putting your mask on first and really doing some stuff for you because you know it's going to catapult you is hard for people to make. So take us through that decision of, again, that identification of what I needed, and then that courage to do what I needed to do for me.
So, you know, I realized from the different positions that I worked in when I got out of the Navy until I made that decision to go to school, I'm like, I want to do more and have more of an impact. And I realized that some of the positions that I held, I didn't have a voice. So I felt it was very important. And I'm originally from Virginia and reside in New York. But back home, you know, having a college degree is really important. Because it will make a difference in your social economic status. And I looked at my 4 children and I said, okay, first of all, I was being a role model and didn't really know it, right? Just from doing the things that I was doing.
Right.
But I looked at my children and I said, I want them to see that despite your situation, you can be better if you want to be better. And so going to school for me was more personal than professional, even though it helped me a lot professionally. But I definitely wanted to make sure that they knew it doesn't matter how you struggle, you are determined to be a better person and to do more, you can do it. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. You know, I had a lot of people tell me when I had my first 2 children, oh, you're not going to be anything, you're not going to do anything, nobody's going to want you. Can you imagine that? At 17 or 19 years old, having other people tell you what you're not going to be? And, you know, I think that was a pivotal point for me as well when I said to myself, I can't do it, but I'm going to prove to myself that I can do it.
Yes.
So let's do it.
Yes. Well, and that's so important because, you know, my dad and my mom and dad both always said, you know, people will live up or down to your expectations, right? And you got to be careful with your words. Words matter. And while we talk about sticks and stones and all of this kind of stuff, when we say stuff to people, that's the stuff that gets deep. It gets deep and it sticks and it grows tentacles and it grows roots. And you don't even know that something has been giving you trauma and head trash and drama until years later, right? That was some little tape that's been playing that you didn't even realize was there. And so for you to be able to say, even though all these other people were putting stuff on you, right? No, I want to prove this to me, is so critical. And I want you guys to make sure you heard what she said. She wanted to learn more, right? She wanted to make sure that she was doing some things for her. She knew she was a role model, but she really wanted to do this to prove to herself. Because here's the thing, whether you are getting a certificate or you are getting an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's, a PhD, an EDD, a site, whatever it is you're getting, what is it that is driving you to get that for your own development and betterment and learning? And when you have that, then whatever, one, they can't take it away from you, but two, that serves as a tool in your toolbox to move forward, right? So don't think, oh, I'll never get my PhD. Start with a certificate. Start with a class, right? Start with a seminar. Start somewhere. Start somewhere, right? And so now you did 8 years. So you had told me, we had this conversation, right? You're like, I started and then I just kind of kept going, right?
It was so good, I couldn't stop.
Right. And so talk about that a little bit, because here's the thing, especially in our communities, right? Because the reality is the most highly educated population right now in the US is Black women. The most highly educated. Check the facts, right? The most highly educated. And the number of businesses that are being started now too, right? Because of all the other stuff that's going on in our institutions. But talk a little bit more about what was it each time, because it wasn't easy, right? It wasn't easy getting the next thing, but what was it that said, you know what, I'm going to get this next thing because here's what I think it's going to do for me?
So, I've never been an overachiever in my own opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But however, when I saw that I was able to survive and get that degree in the midst of surviving domestic violence,
yes,
I said, what can I do if I'm in a better situation? Like, oh my gosh, how can I can excel even more if I have things in order?
Yeah.
And so I challenged myself with that first master's degree because I had 3.
Mm-hmm. Y'all hear that? 3.
Yeah,
3 master's degrees. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Lifelong learner. That's how I'm going to label it.
There you go.
But education has been a place of solace for me. I mean, it has kept my mind busy in a positive way. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you something real quick, and I'm going to try not to get emotional when I say this. When I was 4 years old, mm-hmm. my parents realized that I didn't talk a lot. Mm-hmm. So my parents actually, they have Head Start.
Yes.
Preschool.
Yes.
My parents signed me up for a special education Head Start.
Mm.
So at 4 years old, I was in a special education class because I didn't talk and they thought something was wrong with me. Mm. So, after I transitioned from that, I went to regular school, but mm-hmm. it had already been ingrained in me that I was slow, that I couldn't understand things like everybody else.
Yes.
So once I realized that I could learn, and it wasn't a deficiency with my learning, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yes.
And especially if the government is paying for it, I got one of those master's degrees for free while I was in the military.
Yes.
So why not, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. See, this is why this was such a connection and truly just a spirit and heart connection. Because again, both of my parents were educators. My mom is a retired surgical nurse, and she spent the last 20 years of her career teaching other people to be surg techs, right? That's what she did. My dad was an educator, was an administrator in education. And one of the things he always said, and is actually the name of my foundation as I get it up and running, I've already bought the domain name and everything, is all kids can learn. All kids can learn. And my best friend, right, is an administrator in special education, which is so critical and has been so hard hit during the pandemic. But here's the thing about education that is it's so important, but it's so maddening and so spirit killing, which is, if you think about all kids can learn, and that's what he meant, all kids can learn. But if you think about what happens with kids, what is going on at home? Are they getting to eat? What kind of environment are they in? Are they just quiet? Because, if they're not quiet at home, there's a whole other thing they're having to deal with if they are loud, right? If they're seen. Some of that is just about protecting. But we also start to track kids. We start to track them. We start to say, okay, you went to Head Start, which is a phenomenal program, but we're going to put you on the special one, right? And initially they say things like, so you can get extra help, so you can get, but if you don't have educators who believe that all kids can learn, and this is just an opportunity to engage and to step up and to really support, as opposed to those folks who are like, you know what, I got too many folks in my classroom. If I can carve some folks out so I don't have to work as hard, that's a whole different thing. And I have so many educators that I know, and so many educators that I love and that are in my circle, that are working hard to be sure that all kids get an opportunity for education, a quality education. And then you have those fringes that are like, well, I didn't know what I really wanted to do, so I'm going to teach. Really? Is that the person you want leading your classroom? I think not.
No way.
Right? I think not. And so when you hear somebody like Dr. Pearson, and I keep calling her Dr. Pearson on purpose, right? She didn't ask me to do that. I do that on purpose because she earned it. Okay. And when you hear someone like Dr. Pearson and what she overcame, but also because the overcoming is big, but also what her determination was, right? Yes, she overcame. She had the strength to overcome, but she also had a determination that pushed her forward and didn't allow her to let the trauma define the rest of her life. And I'm not saying that it's not hard, because we all got stuff. And there are some situations that are absolutely unimaginable. And that just getting through those is a good, if you can just get through it, it's a good day. And for those people, keep pushing. Don't give up. Find some help. And when you can, tap into that determination and just know that, one, you are capable, you are enough. It is available to you too. Just find the folks you need to help you get there. So I'm gonna get off the soapbox with that. Right. But when you went back, and so you're doing the master's degrees, and then you're going to do your PhD. One of the things you mentioned early, and now you're getting your dream job, right, around DEI. And you mentioned earlier about this experience you had, you were in the military and then you did civilian, and there's so many people you've run into who are leaving because of toxic environments and all this kind of stuff. Talk a little bit about that transition from military to civilian, and even back, right? Because that's one of the things I have as an HR person, is that whole fighting people around, well, we don't know if the vets are going to be okay in a company. Really? Because it's not about them, right? It's about your inability to manage them. But again, soapbox. But talk to us a little bit about that transition, and actually how that learning and that discipline that you knew you wanted assisted you in that transition.
You have to love those stereotypes of biases, right?
Yes.
But when I was active duty in the Navy and then I left the Navy, that was the hardest transition to the civilian world. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people who have not been affiliated with the military do not understand how structured the culture and the subculture in the military is. Yeah. And then when I went into the Army, I went into the Army National Guard. Mm-hmm. And I did do some active duty Army time. And then I transitioned to the Army Reserves. Mm-hmm. So I was always between civilian and military, mm-hmm. because, I was a weekend warrior. Right. And then I also did the 2 weeks once a year. And it wasn't easy. Yeah. And for a couple of reasons. A, when I was in the Army, I was a staff sergeant. So mm-hmm. that's a leadership role. Right. And I had soldiers under me. And, when you're accustomed to that military culture, and I keep emphasizing that because yes. I know people that are listening to me that have been in the military, yes. or are in the military, they understand yes. certain way we do things and say things, and we can get away with, yeah. certain treatments and stuff. Yeah. But when you go to the civilian side, having to switch up, it's just like, what do you call it? Code switching? Yes, code switching. Yes. Uh-huh. So like in the civilian sector, trying to be softer. And I've worked as an HR individual as well. And yes. it's like, okay, I can't say this in the civilian world in this tone right. because someone's going to be offended. Right. But then in the military, I feel like I have to say it in this tone for them to understand the level of authority. And right. Right. So you can imagine the up and down with, okay, I have to be soft around the edges on the mm-hmm. civilian side. Right. It's okay to be a little tough on the military side. Yes. So it wasn't easy, but the military does teach you to adapt and overcome. So adapt, situational leadership. Adapt to your environment, your situation. So that part of the military training really, really helped to be resilient in the civilian sector. Yes. And that's what I want. Those of you who are listening, who are in corporate, who've always been in corporate, who've never served in the military, and I'm not served in the military. I just happen to be very much groomed to be situationally aware and responsive.
I want you to sit back, and we always talk about unconscious bias, and we talk about DE&I, and we talk about big D, right? And inclusion. But we kind of, and while we think about, you know, veterans and how we're going to hire vets, and I won't even get into kind of the exploitation of hiring it just to get the money, because that is another thing that sticks in my craw. But people who are really trying to do the right thing to get vets in, because understanding there's a lot of talent. That's a talent pool that we haven't tapped into as well. I want you to really check your bias, corporate people, including HR, but especially leaders. And especially leaders in situations that are manufacturing, right? Somebody that's building something. I need you to check your bias. Because if you heard her say, the one thing that there are many things, but one of the things that the military really does force you to learn how to do is to be adaptable and flexible. You never know what situation you're going to walk into, so you need to be able to respond. You need to be situationally aware. You need to be adaptable. You need to be flexible. You need to be strong and confident, but you got to understand and assess quickly so you can respond. It is not the military vet that's coming into your organization that is unable to adapt. It is you that is unable to adapt your processes to the fact that someone actually is much more flexible and adaptable than you are. You have gotten so tied to your processes, just like you guys heard me last Tuesday talking about this whole customer service situation. And folks not going through a checklist, but heaven forbid they have to see a situation that doesn't follow the checklist. Because if you get them off the checklist, they're not going to be able to think, right? There's an intellectual laziness, right? So this adaptability and flexibility, Dr. Pearson, that you have learned and been able to use is so powerful. To say a little bit more, because you and I talked about how, you know, what I'd really like to do is start helping more, you know, in that arena, that adaptability and opening people's eyes. Talk a little bit more in detail about that, how you adapted and how you were flexible and how you still showed up authentically as you, right? Because we were talking about that earlier. You're still you, but which piece of you has to show up in that moment to be able to be heard?
Well, you know, just to be clear, the flexibility and adaptability started in my household when I was a kid. While my mother wasn't in the military, you would have thought she was.
Right? Right.
God bless you. So, but related to the question you asked me, I mean, I had to have so many courageous conversations with employees, employers, just people in general as it related to how do you understand people and how do you show up to support people who are different than you?
Yes.
Because adaptability and flexibility is very contingent on the external support that you get as well, especially when you're in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And I find it extremely difficult to be okay with an employer who's willing to bring you into their culture. Yes. And maybe even knowing that the culture is a little toxic. Yep. And not give you the tools and resources to survive that environment. Because remember, that's what the military does. Yes. You know, if you don't get anything else, you're going to get the tools and resources to survive. Yes. I know I used to go out to the field and, you know, baby wipes came and he did different things, but I'm just saying. Right. But you had the tool, you were ready. Had the tools and the resources. Yes. Yeah, and that's so key, right? It's simple. How are you providing the tools and the resources, right? How are you onboarding people so that they do know how to adapt and engage in your culture? And that doesn't mean changing themselves, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about people not being able to be who they are, but giving them what they need to understand how to thrive. So true. I agree. And unfortunately, it's not speaking for all organizations, since I know there's some great ones out there, and I've been in a few. But there are some organizations that are still struggling to get that right. And until they get that right, they're going to continue to lose people. Yeah. They're going to continue to have that turnover and have to bring other people into that toxic environment instead of fixing the root cause of that toxicity. Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. When you find that person, you know, I've been having this issue, as you guys know, with my whole customer service around this new laptop that I bought, and between Chase and Apple, I literally thought I was going to have a stroke this week. And it's really about solutions, right?
And finally got to someone yesterday who it just was amazing. And so I was posting everywhere, right? Finally got somebody gets it because it's about solutions. When you find those managers, leaders, when you find those leaders who are working for you or with you, who get this, who get how to bring people on, who get how to nurture and support and onboard well, utilize them. Don't just be excited about somebody who can bring the financial results. Yeah, that's important. You're a profit, driven business. I get that. But those people who get this part right, those are the ones you really need to support and promote and have them train other folks, right? Because if you think about the military, as you continue to move up the ranks, if I get it right, you have not only gotten the tools in the beginning, but now you know how to use them and can teach other people how to use them appropriately.
You are obligated to teach other people how to use them.
Say that again. Say that again.
You are obligated to teach people how to use it. And that's for leadership in general, not just the military. So all you leaders, remember that.
Mic drop. I don't even know what to say. If you are leading, remember, leadership is about behavior. It is not about position. Because we know a lot of people that have got a title that can't lead their way out of a paper bag. We all know those people. And we know the people who don't have anything after their name. They don't have any title. They are just an individual contributor, and everybody goes to them. Everybody asks them their opinion. Everybody relies on them because they trust them. They know what's going on, right? It's about behavior, not about position. And if you get it, you are obligated as a leader, obligated to make sure those folks around you who you are leading, that they get it too. And it doesn't negate your position to have other people get it.
Exactly.
I mean, yes, it's not the military, right? You're not necessarily relying on the people next to you to keep you alive, right? That's not it. It's unless you are in healthcare or working in a hospital, it is not heart surgery, right?
Right.
But you still have, if you're really trying to get to a goal or an outcome, having those people around you not only understand the assignment, #understand the assignment, but to be able to execute upon that assignment, it is critical to success. I don't understand the disconnect.
Yeah, and those tools and resources that you just talked about will either set people up for success or set them up for failure.
Yes, all the time. Well, when you think about Dr. Pearson, when you think about all of this stuff that you have been through and how you have overcome, right, and how you're moving, and think about the audience. So most of the people that are listening, many of them are in corporate, right? They're in corporate roles. Many of them are starting their own business. It's kind of all over, and it's all over the world. And they're all, because they're listening to the show, I believe they're all leaders in their own right. Sorry, guys, this is what happens when you're in a live show. We get the rice burners going down the street. What is it when you think about the advice that you give to people and the advice that you give to your clients, right? When they're really trying to tap into their own adaptability and flexibility and being able to give those tools to people to lift other people up, what are the things you tell people to really dig into to be able to do that effectively?
Well, I like to tell people to sharpen their own saw. It's just like the analogy you made about the oxygen mask, putting your mask on first before you attempt to help somebody else. So many times we try to pour into others and we're depleting ourselves while doing so.
Yeah.
So that's one of the main things. But also understanding that no matter how you pour into people as a leader, even if you're an informal leader, right? You don't have the title.
Right.
We've already distinguished that leadership is an action, it's a verb. That you allow them the autonomy to be themselves so they can be innovative and creative in whatever it is that they're contributing to.
Yeah.
The worst thing I can't deal with is you see I'm getting all razzled.
Right.
When someone wants you to be them. So when they give you a task or, they're showing you or teaching you and they say, well, I don't do it like that. Okay, well, I'm not you. Let me be me. Give me the tools and resources and allow me to be great.
Yeah. Allow me to be great. Y'all, right? Allow me to be great, because my great may blow your mind.
So true.
And if you're not allowing me to be great, what is it about you that's scared of me being great? Because see, that's about you. That's not about me.
I love that you said that.
Right?
The world needs to hear that, because we do absorb that sometimes, assuming it's something that we've done.
Yes.
And it's not us.
It's not us. You know, that is one of the things when you talk about toxic environments, one of the biggest challenges in toxic environments is there's so many of us, in particular women, people of color, and in particular Black women, that when we're in those toxic environments and something goes wrong, the first thing we do is say, uh-oh, what did we do? Did we not say it right? Did we say it wrong? Did we act, especially for us, did we act too angry? Were we too loud? We start that self-examination first. Now, that is a good thing. You should always be self-aware. You should always say, oh, you know, how did I contribute to whatever happened? The challenge is we take it so far that we automatically not only do the self-examination, but we automatically own the entire situation, the entire outcome that happened. We take ownership of all of that, when it, in many cases, it doesn't have anything to do with us, right? There is an interaction, right? And we own the interaction, but that outcome isn't necessarily all us.
Yeah, and we quickly and readily take accountability for so much more than what we should be accountable for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that creates a lot of things. That creates the imposter syndrome and a couple of other things that we probably could have another show to talk about.
Right.
But I think the more that you get to know yourself, the more that you love yourself,
Mm-hmm.
the more that you pour into the world, you start realizing with that self-awareness that you were talking about,
Yeah.
I'll own what I did.
Yes.
But I'm going to hold you accountable for what you did too. So now let's go ahead and go have that be brave conversation, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
Yes. I love that. And as you said, you know, let me be great. Give me the tools. Tell me where we're going. I like to call it upper and lower control limits, right? Because I'm a data person. Give me the upper and lower limits, and then let me have freedom within those limits, right? And then hold me accountable for letting you know if I'm getting way too close or if I've actually crossed one of those boundaries, right? Let me make sure we got something in place that gives early warning signals, but give me freedom within those boundaries, because again, I may be great in a way that you never expected and may come up with something innovative. You got to give people freedom if you want innovation, right? You got to give them some freedom. And so as you did, especially going into this PhD and really studying kind of this whole human behavior, right? And how we operate in systems and how we operate in organizations. What are some of the revelations that you had both through your study, right? And getting that doctorate, but as you looked and translated that and working with your customers, what are some of the big revelations you've had that you're like, you know, if people can really address this could make a significant change in how we're dealing with people and retaining people?
Well, and I would say in layman's terms, just understanding behavior, understanding how the brain works. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure we were all taught somewhere in high school about how it worked, whether we paid attention or not. I was one of those people, in grade school, I didn't pay attention. Right. But after becoming an adult and studying the brain, I started to realize, okay, this is why people behave this way. It's not that they're stupid. We do label, behaviors, which is not right. Yeah. But just understanding the why behind why someone does something. And there's so many elements to the why. Yes. You're talking about how they were raised. Mm-hmm. There's social, economic background, just anything that they have been exposed to can contribute to that behavior. But, as far as leadership and understanding behavior, what you said in the beginning of the show, checking your own bias, checking those stereotypes that you have, it's really important to not only understanding you, but understanding other people. Mm-hmm. Because, psychology, it teaches us that we tend to view people through the lenses that we have. Yes. Right? And I have my little glasses right here. Right. Right. I take these and I put them on you. Yes. And I want you to see what I see. Yes. Well, it doesn't work that way. Right. Right. I have to understand your lenses and your view in order to better serve and support you and embrace you as who you are.
Yes.
And I think as leaders and just as people, we need to do better with understanding it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Empathy, compassion.
Yes.
Where did those things go?
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's not unkind to be clear, right? But you don't have to be nasty to be candid. I don't understand how people started connecting those things, right? And it's as you said, that understanding the why. There's a reason. There's a reason why people behave the way they behave. There's a reason. There's always something behind it. And so I always told leaders, I'm like, understand that why. So it gives you context. Then you can put the why aside. And because you understand the context, then you can say, okay, here's the behavior I observed. Here was the impact it had on the outcome we wanted. And then you can address it without bashing somebody's character, without passing judgment on what kind of person they are, because that's irrelevant. The only thing that knowing that why has done is given you context to be able to address a behavior.
Yeah.
But we use it as a weapon, right? We use it as a weapon. That whole idea of and it is true that trust, especially in corporations and especially across cultures, and this is where the cultural divide ends up being a challenge. Trust is often built when people know as much about you as they can possibly know, right? They want to know about your life. They want to know about your kids. They want to know where you live, what kind of car you drive, where you eat, because it's a comparison thing, right? I want to know how you live so I can, so because that tells me who you are, right? That kind of stuff. But that is about our own insecurities, right? And so how can you share enough about yourself that is relevant? Because right, wrong, or indifferent, until you are in the position that's making the decisions, you've got to connect with the people who can impact you. Yeah. And if that means allowing people in at some level, then you got to decide where your comfort level is, right?
That's true. And everything relates to boundaries, whether it's personal or professional.
Yes.
And a lot of people struggle with that because they want to let people in enough to get what they need, which is a little selfish.
Yes.
Without having that true boundary in place. And anybody that knows me knows that boundaries are really important to me. Yes. Not just for strangers, but for people I know as well.
Yes. Yeah. We talked about that earlier. I was like, this pandemic thing, one of the best things of the pandemic for me was having people back up off me. Get your 6 feet. That's been a beautiful thing because I don't like people in my space. So I'm like, can we keep the 6 feet, right? As we go back to quote unquote normal, can we still have those little signs on the floor, right? I just need just back up, But you're right. And so talk a little bit more about boundaries, because we've said a little bit about that on the show, but talk a little bit more about those boundaries, in the workplace. How do you set those? What kind of guidance do you give people around setting those boundaries that enable you to move, right? But really protect yourself as well.
So first I tell people, you have to know what boundaries are. Believe it or not, there are a lot of adults walking around out here that have no clue what boundaries are. Yeah. But I also tell them, set realistic boundaries. Do not set boundaries to the point where you're encountering discomfort and someone else is comfortable. So you shouldn't sacrifice your comfort. And when sometimes when you get this feeling that something's not right, and that's normally the time to set a boundary. Yeah. So then it's all about figuring out how to have that courageous or crucial conversation in order to address that and not burn bridges. And I always tell people, don't have conversations when your emotions are high. You take a step back, pause, get it together, let them know that it's not the right time. Yeah. You give me an hour, a day, 3 days, whatever. Yeah. So we can have this conversation and even prepare for it by writing your thoughts down. Yeah. Because once you say something, you can't take it back, and that's what people are going to use to form those stereotypes and biases about you. Mm-hmm. That is that's so good, because y'all heard her. We've talked about this. Pause. Practice the pause, because there are things once a word is said, it cannot be taken back. Once it is said, it cannot be taken back. And understand, you don't want to burn a bridge. Now, some bridges, you need to light the match and let it go, right? There are some just be done, right? Just be done.
But those are really, I truly believe those are very few and far between, right? That's very rare that you need to light something up and just be done. Most of the time, it's really about setting that boundary so you just don't have to cross it as often. That's just not a bridge you need to have coming up in your life too often, right? And that's about boundaries. That's about boundaries. And another thing you said was when you're setting those, kind of knowing what a boundary is. So people who are struggling right now with setting, especially in kind of a corporate arena, right? If you've got your own business, then hopefully you are doing the work to understand what your boundaries are going to be and what you're going to put in place in your organization. But if you are in a corporation or an organization working for someone else, how do you have people kind of start identifying, one, when their boundaries have been crossed, and really understanding what that is, but two, how to start setting them?
So as far as your leader, your manager, building that rapport with them and having the psychological safety to be able to discuss that is really important. Because your psychological safety will depend on the level of boundary you set with an individual or a group of people. And I would tell people to ensure people understand that you're coming from a place of good intent.
Yes.
That you're not trying to be rude or disrespectful, but there are some things that are tolerable and some things that are not tolerable when it becomes or when it comes to behavior XYZ. And showing respect is really important. I think a lot of times when you show people respect and you set those boundaries, they understand. They understand that there are triggers that cause me to set boundary, and that's why I have these in place. So our individual or group protocol need to be understood so that way. And what are your boundaries?
Right.
I want to respect yours as well. Don't put boundaries in place when you're not willing to accept them from somebody else as well.
Oh, that's so good. Don't think that you're the only one that gets to set boundaries.
Right.
Right? Because then we get mad when people don't respect ours, but we haven't respected theirs. Right? It's mutual. It's mutual. And when you talk about that, about setting those and having those conversations, right, and knowing what those are, and you talked about triggers. So that identification of things that trigger you. And I think about that when I do one-on-one coaching, especially when I coach folks that are in a corporate setting, right? I have to really be mindful of my own triggers because of the own trauma, because corporate America can create some trauma, y'all. It just really can. And I have to be very mindful of my own trauma so that I'm not projecting that, right? Physician, heal thyself. As you heard Dr. Pearson say, you got to do your own work, right? You got to sharpen your own saw. How do you help people who maybe have, because I'm a believer in therapy, but not everybody is, or at least having somebody to talk to. If someone hasn't had the opportunity to do the work or doesn't understand how to do the work, how do you understand when something is impacting you because it truly is a trigger, not just because it may or may not be as bad as you think it is, right? Not passing judgment on how significant it is, but there's something about it that triggers you. How do you start to recognize that so you can address that for yourself and then understand that in setting boundaries?
Well, for me, I've been doing it so long, even before I studied psychology, and I don't know if it's just in my genetic makeup, but, when my cups started overflowing, and I can contribute that to someone else's behavior, then I don't know if you've ever watched the Andy Griffith show, Party Fight. Yes. He would always tell Andy, nip it in the bud.
Yes.
So I'm a nip it in the bud kind of person. But for other folks, I would say being self-aware. And that's not something you can always teach people.
True.
And if people are not comfortable with talking to therapists or mental health professionals, I would definitely have an accountability buddy.
That's good.
Whether it's a best friend, family member, stranger that meets you at the park and sit on a bench,
right?
2:00 every Saturday.
Yeah.
Have someone that you can talk to about things that bother you, because a lot of times things you're not aware of, when you have that conversation, that other person can let you know what your triggers are. And then you have that responsibility to become self-aware moving forward.
That's good. That's good, because self-awareness is hard work. Self-work is hard work. Self-work is hard work because we gotta, you can lie to a lot of people, but you really can't lie to yourself. When you look in the mirror, you know, even if you don't want to say it out loud, you don't want to admit it, you don't want to own it, you know, your spirit knows when something's not right, right?
I have that magical mirror. It
Yes.
talks back to me.
Yeah.
Girl, you know you wrong.
Right. You probably should not have said that, right? We might need to go back and regroup on that one, right? And I've had those moments too, as we, especially with a lot of microaggression that happens, right? A lot of people around us who refuse to be accountable for their behavior or start to explain it away. Well, that's not what I meant. That's not what I said. You heard it wrong, right? So projecting back on you the impact of their actions gets really old, and the burden gets really heavy. It gets really heavy. And I want to tell you guys, don't feel bad that the burden is heavy, because the burden is heavy. So let's just acknowledge that the burden is heavy. But we also have a choice in how we respond to that burden. And I think it was Lena Horne, is sometimes, you know, the problem is that you're carrying stuff that you don't have to carry, right? You're carrying stuff that's not yours. It's not the load that breaks you, it's how you're carrying it, right?
Yes.
And so how do we adjust so that we're not carrying everybody else's stuff? Because I don't know about you, but I got enough of my own in this backpack that I got on. I don't have room for everybody else's. Yes. I'm like, I don't have room for everybody else's. I'm trying to get my own stuff put away, right? So you're not responsible for owning everybody else's stuff. But as Dr. Pearson says, you are obligated, when you are leading people, to give them the tools and the support to be the best they can be with the tools you provide. You are obligated to do that, but you're not obligated to own everybody else's stuff. There's a difference.
What you just mentioned, we call that vicarious trauma in psychology. When you assume the trauma of other people, because and it's very common among psychologists, because they hear so many people's problems on a regular basis.
Yes.
They tend to take on some of that bad energy. But I like how you said, just being aware and realizing when you need to do something different. I think that's the main thing to change. Yes. People are so accustomed to the person that they like, other people knowing that they think they are. Yes. That they don't be their true self. Right. And that's an issue. Authenticity is really important in self-care, self-esteem, self-confidence, all those selves.
Yes, all the selves. Yeah. And it's hard. It's just like, I don't lie, because who has the time and energy to try to keep up with all the lies you tell, right? Just tell the truth. Tell the truth and shame the devil, right? I just don't have that much brain energy, right? I don't have that much energy to keep up with all the stuff, right? But the other piece to what you said is, it is important that you can be authentic when you show up, because otherwise, which costume are you putting on for which person? Which pair of shoes do you have? I don't even remember the movie. Mrs. Doubtfire, right? Remember when he was like with the one producer, but then he was also with the family's Mrs. Doubtfire, and he's going to the bathroom in between and having to change, and he comes back and he's still got the wig on, right? At some point, you're going to wear the wrong shoes to the wrong meeting.
That's true.
So just be you.
Oh my goodness.
Just be you. Don't have to worry about which outfit, right? Just be you. And find a place. And I don't take this lightly, because this is hard, right? Find a place where, even if that's a day where the you that you want to show up is clouded by all the yous that you try to keep to close friends and family, be confident enough to say, today I'm just going to need a minute. I'm not necessarily myself. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm not as patient as normal. I'm not, I'm moving even quicker because I just got other stuff on my mind. Just tell people, put people on notice. Hey, tomorrow will be better, but today I just know I'm having a day. So it's not you, right? It's not you. It is me. Just say it.
Being true to yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so as we get here, oh my God, you're so awesome. We have to have you back on. We just have to have you back on. And we have to have you come back to Texas when you visit your friends in Texas, and just have you in studio, which will be even more awesome.
That would be lovely.
And so as we kind of wrap this up, what are, 1, 2, 3, whatever key things that you would tell people as they are showing up and being true to who they are, right? Trying to be lifelong learners. what are some key learnings that you have had and advice that you would give to people as they're just trying to do the best they do every day?
I like to keep things simple. So I'll tell you, know yourself.
Yes.
Be yourself. And pour into others when you can. To me, life is about bank transactions, deposits and withdrawals. I had a wonderful leader whose name I'm not going to mention that instilled that in me.
Yes.
And you definitely want to make sure that when you're making withdrawals, I like to make more deposits than I make withdrawals.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Know yourself, be yourself, and give as much as you possibly can when you can. That's like a big three. That's a big three. Well, Dr. Pearson, thank you. We're going to get the information, her suggestions for you on how you become a more disciplined individual, right? A disciplined leader. So we're going to get some stuff from her, and I'll make sure to post it and share it with you. Again, I'll make sure her information is out there too. Follow her. She's on LinkedIn. She is on Instagram. She's on Facebook, Dr. Angela Pearson, and the OD Synergistics, right? LLC. You can see both of those on those platforms. Follow her, see what she's up to, ask her questions, right? Engage with her. She is just an incredible human, as you've seen this hour, and has some amazing insights. And we are so excited for you on this next journey that you are having, your dream job that you got. Congratulations. We are so excited. He is all the time. And we're so thankful that you spent some time with me on the Rutledge Perspective Radio Show today. I've been blessed by this. I hope that everybody who was listening and watching has also been. We will have the replay up, on my YouTube channel, and we'll get that to you guys soon too. So, any comments, questions, producer extraordinaire?
A lot of comments. They're just back and forth, agreeing with you guys.
Awesome.
What you have to say.
Yay. So we will make sure, guys, that you get all of Dr. Pearson's information. Thank you, Dr. Cynthia J. Hickman, for being a mutual friend. And for
I love her so much.
Me too. It is Caregiver Month. Make sure you are following her too. She's got a lot of stuff going on, and her book is out, so still go get her book. This is such a blessing being able to share this time with you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of the show. Oh, they all say great segment. Thank you, Dr. Pearson. And so plan to tune in on Tuesday, 10 a.m. Central Time, KCOH Radio TV, The Boost. You can find it on Facebook, LinkedIn. We're going live. Appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Take care.